Hey boys and girls, how you doing? Another episode of Village Idiot. How can I go about this? This one's gonna be a little direct. I guess this is more on life experience. So this topic is gonna be very not controversial, but it's gonna have some information back and forth about certain things. And hopefully this engages those individuals that want to engage, those that actually are at a lower educated level than actually a higher educated level, though the higher educated level can actually debate about this topic as well. But those are actually for more of a lower educated level that actually don't really understand or don't really want to understand, but no, you get my drift here. This is not about basically the higher educated trying to understand. This is more about the lower educated trying to understand just a little bit more for their survival. So, this is going to be really funny. But before we get into this whole concept, I want to address another sign for those individuals that actually are followers or not followers or, want to embrace a different way of going about things. I use a term called dropping, where basically people just start talking randomly about anything else. But if they see a certain specific person or anybody else, sometimes they may be apprehensive to talk about. So, either which way, the term drop of information, I kind of made my own term. Let's just say you see me walking around on the street and something should happen. And I do nothing about it. I don't move. I don't do anything. I don't say anything. And let's just say a couple of followers see me. So, this is just supposed to engage, to give them a hint. See the bag? See the bag? Cute little bag. You see me walking? Oh, so now I do this. My personal opinion, what I'm looking at it as, that's my way of saying drop. Now, I've done this before in videos a long time ago, but this is just a way to engage. Now, it's your choice whether you want to drop what information you want. This is just giving a sign and saying, go ahead and say something. Now that's said and done, let's get on with all the information that we got here. This concept is something that I've been working on a long time ago. Like I said, this has to do with life experience. And we've heard phrases as, I believe there was one porn studio that talked about the fight against crystal meth. There was another, I believe it was Nancy Reagan that actually started a campaign for the Just Say No campaign, which, everybody has their valid points. Some were against it, some were for it. But here's mine. I'm not one to say you're not going to use. I'm not one to say that actually you should use. To be frankly honest, if you go about your whole entire life not using something, congratulations to you. Because, to be frankly honest, sooner or later you are going to use some sort of substance. Mind-altering substance, body-altering substance, whatever. This is just to say that actually sooner or later you may have to come across this path. So here's some instances to keep in mind. Now the first thing we want to go over, the whole concept of my line that I love using, instead of actually, just say no or I don't use drugs for being hypocritical about it, I like to apply this concept. Don't party hard. Party smart. Stupid, right? It's something that actually, your acid-induced grandfather would tell you. I know, it's dumb. It seems dumb, but there is some truth behind it. And I'll get into it more later, but actually, let me tell you this. Through my experiences, I've been drugged myself. And I don't like being drugged. If I do the drugs, then actually the only person I have to blame is myself. But if somebody drugs me and they get run over on me, then I have to blame myself and that person or persons because I let them get run over on me. And to be frankly honest, I hate being a victim. I don't like to admit that I'm a victim. I don't think any gay man likes to admit they're a victim. So to be frankly honest, yeah. Let's give some good concept here. How can I put this? Everyone knows the golden rule of you go into a bar or you go into a club, don't put your drink down and walk away from it. That's just like 411. We already know. No, but for some reason we always can't have our eyes on everything. So just have a heightened awareness if you're going to put yourself in that environment. And sometimes things backfire. My ex decided to do. We were at a club. I was having a good old time. It was New Year's Eve, and I was dancing up a storm. Never put my drink down, never did anything. Went up to the bar. He was there with his friend, and I was just like, okay, I'm thirsty. So he comes over and gives me an empty bottle. Well, I'm sorry, a full bottle of water, but the cap was off. Drank the water. Not even 10-15 minutes later, well, you know that story. What bothered me is actually, of all people that did it to me, it was him. And I blame myself because I should have saw that coming. I knew what his personality was. I knew basically what his friends were like. And I'm not going to get into the major details here, but yeah. I should have saw that coming. What made me feel like actually I was that special that actually he wouldn't do something like that is regardless. So it's really on back and forth on basically the portrayal concept, but I can't blame him fully. I have to take responsibility for myself, if that makes sense. Now, before we go into anything else, let me tell you something. This is the fun part. Let's take the subject off. Don't party hard, party smart, and let's talk about this celibacy thing that I've been doing. Yeah, houseboy sex slave goes celibate. Yeah. Gee, I wonder why. Okay, sounds stupid, right? Now, usually most people see celibacy as like a vow, more of a religious standpoint. And for me, a gay man that actually has simple agnostic views, yeah, I took this vow of kind of celibacy because basically most of the guys that actually been around pretty much just want to kill me if not own me. So, yeah, kind of just stop having sex. No penetration, no kissing, no holding hands, no cuddling. Actually, I'm coming to the point, actually, even more so that actually, if I'm walking on the street and I see two gay men holding hands, I, avoid them like the plague. Literally, I just, walk around or I'll turn around. It's not that I hate it. It's just, my mind goes, bonkers of trying to understand the concept behind that because I feel like, actually, because of my instances and my experiences, remember, I'm from New Jersey. At that time, we didn't really show public signs of affection. So if we did show public signs of affection, we'd get our asses kicked, if not almost killed. So I can't help it in New York City. Yeah, if I did that, I'd be putting somebody else in jeopardy. It's bad enough I'm already putting myself in jeopardy. I'm going to put somebody else in jeopardy. Yeah, it's a little bit more complex than that. But anyway, I can see when two lesbians are walking with hands in hands, I'm just so for it. When it's two drag queens or when it's, two transvestites or two, that I'm fine with that. Heterosexual people, I am saying good for them. I'm for them. When it's two gay men, yeah, I have to turn away. Fucked up, right? I wonder why. So this whole celibacy thing, don't get me wrong, most people are like, oh great, you're fucking celibate now? Hear me out. Ever since I've done this celibacy thing, well, number one, I've been going to sleep quicker. Number two, when I climax, my loads are bigger. Number three, more sensitive and exhilarating and intense when I do climax. I mean, my neighbors can probably vouch for this. Every time I climax, and I've never really done this before, maybe once in a while in my past that actually I was so vocal because I'm not a vocal person during sex. I just can't do it. I can't. Moaning, maybe. Vocal, no. But when I climax, now more so than ever, literally it's hysterical because the only thing you hear is fire! Yeah! Ah! Yeah. A little too loud. Kind of scares people. Half the neighbors are like at 5 o'clock in the morning, they're like, again? Yeah. That's how I sound like when it's really that sensitive. Woo! Anyway, I just needed to say that, get that out there. So, if anything, if you feel like you need to break, need to do some kind of, reconstruction or rethinking, give this whole celibacy thing a chance. Why not? Relate to yourself. I mean, the whole concept also with the celibacy thing, in my views and my rules that I'm making, I don't do penetration. So, yeah. But, as stupid as that, I mean, gay men going celibate, yeah. Unless you're a priest, it's very uncommon. And good luck to those that do. But I'm not putting any time limit on it, so that's the good thing. And as I believe it was even in social psych, those that actually are male, mostly gay males, but male in general, if they try to be celibate, it's really not going to happen. So I got to give myself at least some credit for getting this far. So, where are we going first? Don't party hard, don't party smart. Remember. So, let's go into timing. Now, there's a whole list of drugs out there, and you guys can Google this yourself and find the information. If you're going to use some of these substances, or you're going to be using some alcohol, if you're going to be using prescription drugs, whatever else, it would be really smart not to just also look at the side effects, but also how long it lasts in the system. Now, I'm going to give you some fine points here. So, here, let's try this one. Now, I believe it says here, I'm sorry. Oh, let's just say if you're doing heroin. Now, I'm not going to go with the whole concept of fentanyl being mixed in between. We're just going to say it's heroin. Keep in mind that heroin can last in the system anywhere from 2 to 7 days. Good to know, right? Great. 2 to 7 days for heroin. Now, how long does E last in the system? Ecstasy can last in the system for 2 to 4 days. Funny, right? Now, what about alcohol? Alcohol is a little bit more tricky. On the breath, alcohol can last from 12 to 24 hours. In the urine, 12 to 24 hours, but more so if you go back and forth from how many drinks, it could last to almost 72 hours. Not to mention for saliva with alcohol can last for 12 to 24 hours, and if you're doing a hair analysis test, it's 90 days. Hold on 1 second, I just want to make sure I got my information here right. And then we have cocaine. Supposedly cocaine lasts in a urine test for 3 days, give and take. So that's good to know. Now, I've known this before, but I'm just making sure I have the right information because sometimes these things can change. G. Now, this is a really funny part about G. I know a lot of gay men love actually doing crystal meth and G at the same time. So, yeah, traces can be like variation of that. But here's the problem with that I have with G, depending also the amount that actually most men actually use, it knocks them the fuck out. They go right to sleep. I'm just like, literally, you're supposed to be having sex, not fucking falling asleep. Nothing like passing out right in the middle of actually someone getting fucked in the ass. But, excuse me. So, G lasts in the system for at least 12 hours. Now, some people say it can last up to 8 hours. Other people say, depending on a small amount in your urine, it can go for 12 hours. But this is the problem with GHB, is that actually if you get drugged with GHB, and let's just say something happens, and let's say you wake up, your ass hurts, you've been sexually violated, whatever, you can't really prove that actually something really did happen, because basically within that small amount of hours in the window, it can dissipate from your system within a certain amount of time. So if you wait 24 hours and then realize you've been dosed, yeah, it's not going to be in your system anymore, and it's going to make that story a little bit harder to believe. So that's the 411 information I wanted to give on that particular drug. Now, it's good to know also when it comes to crystal meth. The crystal meth boys that are out there that actually smoking the shit up, go ahead, have fun, whatever. Crystal meth can last in the system from 3 to 4 days, depending also the variations of how much you do. Don't get me wrong, if you keep on smoking, you're going to actually build up a tolerance. You build up that tolerance, you're going to be smoking, and the issue is that actually you're going to keep smoking at least the entire bag, and then realize you're still not getting the effects as when you did when you first did it. Remember, you're building a tolerance, and when you build that tolerance, then actually you either indulge in more, or you're going to have to stop to at least get the effects that you want when you first did it. So let's keep that in mind. And I believe that happens with any type of drug. You start to build the tolerance. So just watch yourself on that one. Oh, now, I really want to talk about also, this is interesting. There's a troubling connection with intelligence and addiction. The first of these studies were published in 2011, found that children, just children, with high results in IQs back in the 70s were subsequently more likely to abuse drugs later in life. So those with high IQs, at least at that time, were abusing drugs later in life. Now you would think that actually it would be more so those of the lower educated or those in poverty. Au contraire. Not to mention also, men who had an IQ score of 109, the highest in the study, were trying drugs much earlier and also used drugs more frequently than those who tested with an IQ of 100. Now that's just men in general. It's not saying gay men, it's not saying bisexual men, it's not saying pansexual, it's not saying anything about that. That's just men in general. So let me say that again. Specifically, the study found that men who had a mean of IQ score of 109, the highest in the study, were trying drugs much more earlier and used drugs more frequently than those tested in an IQ range of 100. Go figure, right? Now, here's the fun part. Here, I'm going to add this little piece of information in there. So, get on board with this one. Let's talk about those that are the greatest minds and yet used mind-altering substances. Let's take these, let's take Freud, for instance. Freud once thought that cocaine was a miracle drug. Freud was a cokehead. Can you believe this shit? Freud, yes, the one that every psychologist praises. Cokehead. Now let's try a couple of other people that actually you may not know. Just to throw these out there. Charles Dickens. Did you know that Mr. Dickens, the idea of the White Christmas? This was funny. Opium use. Ernest Hemingway? Alcohol, obviously. Edgar Allan Poe? Addiction to alcohol. Howard Hughes? Injecting opiates. Marilyn Monroe? Barbiturates and prescription drugs. Philip K. Dick, who's wrote dozens of novels on experiences of paranoia, schizophrenia, and drug abuse. Methamphetamines. And let's just get one more. I really don't want to say this name because I think he's like the shit. But they have this information out there, so I am going to say it. Stephen King. So what it says here, King used cocaine, Xanax, Valium, NyQuil, beer, tobacco, and marijuana. No offense, Mr. Stephen King. You know where I can get a good supply of Valium? Just saying. I need to be more calm, cool, and collective. So thanks for putting that information out there. I'm not saying that actually we should, I don't know, think what you like. The information's out there. These great minds, and yet they're still human. They still go through their issues and dilemmas, and to put that information out there, to take a bullet for everyone else, just to show everyone else in the world that actually they are more human than anything. You know what? Fuck it. So let's get out of those genius minds and those that actually use drugs. Don't get me wrong, there are so many other. I'm not going to use role model because I hate using the term role model. For me, role models are outdated and overrated. Role models are for kids. I'm sorry. But I'm not going to frown upon on it because basically the term role model was coined by a sociologist. What I look at these people like Stephen King or Freud or anybody else down the line, I look at them as symbols. They can be a good symbol, they can be a bad symbol, they can be a sex symbol, they can be an intellectual symbol, they can be anything. But they are symbols. Nothing more, nothing less. So where am I getting with this don't party hard, party smart thing? This information here is to apply that information of what we just said before, and to get that idea of, okay, if I'm a little bit more aware of how long drugs should be in my body, then I should be able to anticipate how much usage, we're not going to talk about moderation, how much usage, but also how much downtime do I need to recuperate. This is about actually trying to be a little bit more responsible for your own well-being. It's not just also making sure you only do 2 beers and work with that in moderation, which is good, fine, whatever. But it's also how do we recuperate? How long will we need to do to recuperate? It's predicting our behavior and then the outcome later. Might as well think about it, right? God forbid, if there is one, that you think about it. So, let's go into public relations. Check that out. This is some interesting stuff here. I found it interesting. I put this on Facebook beforehand for Village Idiot, but I felt that this was funny. Harvard School of Public Health Study. Binge drinking was defined as 5 drinks in a row for males and 4 drinks in a row for females. A drink was defined as 12 ounces of beer or wine cooler, 4 ounces of wine, or 1.25 ounce shot of liquor. Good to know. Now, they have this thing here where it says the problem of binge drinking on college campuses is not about a traditional rite of passage. It is about young people dying. According to the Journal of Studies on Alcohol, 1,400 college students between 18 to 24 die each year from alcohol-related unintentional injuries, including motor vehicle crashes. More than 600,000 students are assaulted by another student who have been drinking. Another 700 students are victims of alcohol-related sexual assault or date rape. The list goes on. The good news is that truth can save lives. New York researchers have discovered that college students drink less when they learn their classmates drink less. Good to know. There's an idea, right? Oh, excuse me. Now, here's an approach that actually I think is very phenomenal. I don't know how old this approach is, and I should do a little bit more research, but I'm just going to throw the idea out there. Maybe you guys actually, once you hear the approach, maybe you can go ahead and take a look at it and research it yourself. Remember, this is about actually just acknowledging it and seeing what you may like, pick and choose, and then research it yourself to find out more. This is to encourage, but also to make sure that actually there's a prevention behind it. Just being a little bit more aware, if you want to be. So there's something called the Bowling Green approach, which has been judged by the U.S. Department of Education as one of the top 6 in the country. It attacks the problem on smaller, more targeted scale. The program focuses on small groups of students considered at the high risk of binge drinking. Those groups have been freshmen, athletes, and members of fraternities and sororities. In-group students are asked to complete a survey of how much alcohol they consume and how much they think their peers consume. After the survey was tabulated, a second meeting was held to discuss the results. Without fail, students think their peers are drinking more than they actually are. As she said once, the truth is exposed. Students feel less pressure to drink to fit in. So here's another thing. At Dartmouth College, students return to campus to find advertisements describing a campus survey. Conclusion: 58% of students don't think alcohol is important to have a party. The University of Arizona has been spreading the word that most students don't drink heavily. Now, to their credit, many student organizations have chosen to tackle the problem as well. One example can be found in Michigan State, which has established a vigorous anti-alcohol campaign. Following binge drinking death, an alcohol-fueled riot in many MSU's Greek communities sobered up. The taps have been turned off. Our overall living conditions improved, and our overall academic grade point average went up. Interesting, right? Just something to actually have food for thought. Now, here we go. I want to touch on, let's go back to crystal meth a little bit. There's always this, I don't want to say fallacy, but I am going to say this. There's this theory, and this has been debated back and forth by people, that those who use crystal meth, if you do have a drug test coming soon, you can use baking soda and water to alter the test. Some people say, yes, this works. Some people say, no, this doesn't work. I believe one girl even said that actually, I believe it was just a girl, lives in Salem, Oregon, and this was found on Jora or whatever. She talks about First of all, the process of using baking soda and water, yes, it does work if done correctly. You have to give yourself time to do this. Start with 8-ounce glass of plastic cup and spoon, and whatever large spoon of 2 heaping spoons of baking soda in the cup. Use water or juice, whatever you can drink fast, because you're going to drink this all at once. Now, I've heard things back and forth from certain people. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really has to do with timing. To be frankly honest, I'm not really going to talk about personal experience, but I am going to say some people do say it works. And as for theory, I remember talking to a couple people and they tested it out like 3 times, and each and every time they came back clean. So I wouldn't know anything about that, wouldn't I? So let's get at that one. I want to make people also a little aware of something else. Now, I've heard also through, let's just say, like I said, I had a couple of porn star friends that talked about those that go on to sets. Don't get me wrong, like I said, drugs are everywhere. You can't stop people from doing drugs. And sooner or later, they're going to at least try some kind of substance anyway. But let's get back to where I'm getting at. Like I said, I had a couple of porn star friends that talked about some of them on their sets were using, what is it? Psychological meds. They're using sedatives. So instead of actually saying, well, we don't use illegal drugs, but it's okay to use those that are legal drugs. You know, it's one thing that actually some of these people are actually prescribed this medication. If they're prescribed the medication, that's fine. Because then actually it's going back to them having some form of mental illness or some diagnosis. So then basically it's okay to take these drugs. But to actually take these substances when it's not prescribed to you, then you're kind of fucking yourself a little bit here. And the reason why I say that is because for those that actually, I knew that were friends of mine that are not really aware of this, but others are. Like I said, this is for those people that don't understand, to make them aware just a little bit more so they can do the research themselves and smarten up just a tiny little bit. So, let's just take this concept. Have you ever heard the term of dual diagnosis? Now, a lot of people are like, yeah, I've heard of it before. Cool. Now, from what I've actually read here, the examples of dual diagnosis is a mental health problem or disorder leading to associated with problematic alcohol or other drug use. A substance use disorder leading to associated with a mental diagnosis. That's the basic of it. Let me put it this way. For those that actually work on this sets, if actually they are aware that actually they, do suffer from some, diagnosis in like say depression or something, and then they're taking prescription drugs that actually isn't prescribed to them, then they may develop some kind of usage issue. I'm not saying that actually it's a big problem, it's a usage issue. And if they go, let's just say, to a counselor or some kind of therapist and say, you know what, I've used these prescription pills, I've used these drugs, I've used this alcohol, I just use, I'm not addicted, I just use, I'm a recreational user. They're going to look at it and be like, you know what, dual diagnosis for you. And if you're in a courtroom setting and they look back and see dual diagnosis, it makes your story even more so unbelievable. Because now they got to go back and forth, saying either your alibi is fictitious because you're suffering from what can I say? The side effects of the drug or substance, let alone you may be suffering from also could be the mental illness. So it goes back and forth, so it makes your story or your alibi or whatever else that much more unbelievable. So really watch out when it comes to dual diagnosis. Really watch out for it. Make sure that actually I'm not saying school yourself on the whole particular criteria of it. I don't even think there's a criteria for it. I'm not sure. I have to take a look at that. But just be a little bit more aware of that one. Because either which way, anybody will slap that one on you, and then you're going to take even that much more of a bullet on the foot. So, what about that? Now, we're going to go a little bit more of information here on, let's try adherence to medications. Now, this is found in this book here. Beautiful, isn't it? Yes, mental health nursing. So even your nurses are going to be able to point out certain things. But this is adherence to medications. Persons with severe or persistent mental illness find it difficult to find or follow regular course of psychotropic medications. For some individuals, this is because attitudes of taking medication, whereas others feel so much improvement that they believe they no longer need the medications. Medications are often stolen or lost, and those prescriptions are difficult to obtain. Persons discharged with prescriptions are sometimes unable to afford the medications. Now, this is basic information just to throw out there. The side effects of medications are one of the primary reasons for discontinuing prescribed medical regime. The healthcare provider needs to carefully assess the person's ability to remember his or her medications, the dosage, and the need of that adherence. The longer a person is ill, the more educated the person is before the onset of the mental illness. Though more likely the person will be well informed of his or her medications. Educational programs designed for persons with severe to persistent mental illness enhance the ability to manage their own medications. Now, that's cute. That's really cute. That's really nice to know. But I kind of lose faith when it comes to those people that talk about educational programs or those that actually try to school those individuals on medications and their dosage. They feel like that's education. It's easy to just say, oh, you're bipolar and here's your medication, you're at 25 milligrams, and they think that's educating. That's not educating. That's just slapping a diagnosis to actually get more money for. I'm sorry. You're going to educate somebody on their mental illness, then do yourself a favor, pull out the fucking goddamn DSM, go down the criteria, then also tell them what specific medications, if not all medications, that actually fit for that criteria. Educate them even on the concept that actually there is a DSM that even exists. I've known people that actually go ahead and say what diagnosis they are and don't even know where the diagnosis is coming from. I mean, is that really educating? Or is that just being half-assed? So let's also tackle substance abuse in the nursing book. Now, like I said, these are small little information here to actually just engage the person or followers to go ahead and take a look into it more. Find the research for yourself. And then from that information, pick and choose which one you particularly feels close to you. Persons with severe and persistent mental illnesses are also dependent on one or more substances are among the most difficult to treat in their either psychiatric or substance abuse treatment programs. Good to know, right? Hello. Persons with dual diagnosis, here we go again. Now that they have identified primary psychiatric diagnoses, have a high rate of hospitalization. Many more persons with mental disorders, alcohol abuse, and drugs are in the general population. The coexisting of drug abuse and mental illness often causes a more severe course of illness. Substance abuse distorts symptoms and reduces impulse control. Persons with dual diagnosis often have unstable living arrangements and act out in violent and criminal behavior. I think that's pretty much anyone and everyone, but we'll go with it. Reduced impulse control also results in increased suicidal behaviors. Have more difficulty organizing their lives and more likely to be homeless. Persons with severe and persistent mental illness have a dual diagnosis are more difficult to treat than individuals with one primary psychiatric diagnosis. Now, I've been in homelessness beforehand. I've been in prison. And the thing is that actually we see this cycle happen within those individuals that become, oh yeah, I'm gonna take that diagnosis and I'm schooled in my diagnosis and I know what I'm talking about and I'm taking my medication. It's just like, are you really? Do you even know what the diagnosis is about? Do you know the criteria behind it? And this is where I blame those that are higher educated, those nurses, those staff members, those therapists, those doctors, for slapping the diagnosis and not get into particulars of where they're getting their information from. But to be frankly honest, I hate to use this quote, but when it comes to mental illness, it's your mental health. You do something about it. Because nobody's going to do it for you. And if you want to be a statistic in the system, that's up to you. I'm sorry, that really perturbs me a little bit. You should be able to fight, if not argue a little bit, with the information what you feel is close to the diagnosis that you are compared to what actually is being evaluated by another doctor. And then try to come together and go back and forth of what you believe and what you know with what information can be applied and what date information can be applied. But the thing is actually, as I said beforehand, it's your mental health. You do something about it. You're the one that actually is paying it out from your insurance company. So if you're paying for it, you should be the one to fucking demand for it. That's how I feel about it. Now, let's also engage a little bit more on what kind of diagnoses are out there for basically any kind of substance abuse. Now, I'm going to go about a little bit of information that is found in the DSM-4 text revision. Now, we do have also one thing called a general medical condition. This is found in the DSM-4 classification. Remember, this is just to familiarize yourself, to engage yourself, to go ahead and research this information for yourself and pick and choose whether what you like, what can apply, and just acknowledge that actually it's out there. You just need to go ahead and find it. Again, it's your mental health. You do something about it. So, general medical condition, a substance-induced sexual dysfunction. You also have bipolar disorders that have a substance-induced mood disorder, anxiety disorders, substance-induced anxiety disorder. Now, this is found in the DSM-4 text revision. Not to mention, we have medical disorders due to general medical conditions not elsewhere specified. Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong one. Freudian slip. We have substance-related disorders. This is the fun part. We have alcohol-related disorders, amphetamine-related disorders. My favorite, caffeine-related disorders. Yes, caffeine is a drug. I mean, literally, I was at a center once, and I said that actually, did you know caffeine is a drug? I mean, it's found in every sociology textbook. And the guy flipped on it, he's like, caffeine's not a drug. I'm like, you call yourself a counselor? You're going to tell me and get all hell bent because basically I told you caffeine is a drug, and you look at me like I'm retarded? I mean, thanks, counselors. Thanks for actually saying that. Instead of taking it in consideration, be like, where'd you get this information? The counselor is too busy actually disengaging it. So yes, caffeine is a drug, and there's a caffeine-related disorder. You also got your, at that time, cannabis-related disorders. You also got your cocaine-related disorders, your hallucinogen-related disorders, inhalant-related disorders, nicotine-related disorders, opiate disorders, sedative, hypnotic, and the analytical related disorders, polysubstance related disorders, and just in case that we haven't covered everything else, we got other substance related disorders, and that's to the DSM-4 classifications. Now let's check into the DSM-5. Remember, things do change, and since I'm here in New York City, some hospitals look at the DSM-4, other hospitals look at the DSM-5. But if we talk about rules and regulations within the courtroom systems of New York City, it states in the rules and regulations when it comes to applying guilty or not guilty verdicts and acknowledging mental illness that actually those within that system are supposed to be using the most recent DSM. So why the court systems are using certain records from other hospitals that are recognizing the DSM-4 text revision when they're supposed to be recognizing the DSM-5. Yeah, the more you know, right? So let's go back to substance-related addictive disorders. Remember, this is supposed to familiarize yourself to know that actually this is out there. It's your mental health. You do something about it. Because basically, if you want to be another statistic, you go ahead and be another statistic. Alcohol-related disorders. Now, you have something called an alcohol use disorder. Now, there's at a mild, moderate, and severe level. So that means that actually anyone and everyone who drinks a glass of alcohol is going to be looked upon as an alcohol use disorder. Of course, that also depends on the doctor. I mean, take a look at me. I actually went to, let's just say, Rikers Island, and I got diagnosed with a mild alcohol abuse disorder. How? Because I told that therapist that I drank a glass of wine once on Monday, once on Tuesday, once on Wednesday, once on Thursday, once on Friday. How that pertains to being alcohol mild abuse disorder, I have no idea. But guess what? It's all about making money, right? So then you also have alcohol intoxication, which comes in a mild, moderate, and severe. And then you have a without use disorder. You have alcohol withdrawal, which is also with perceptual disturbances. You have other alcohol-induced disorders, unspecified alcohol abuse disorders. You got yourself caffeine intoxication, caffeine withdrawal, caffeine-induced disorders, unspecified caffeine-reduced disorders, cannabis use disorder at a mild, moderate, and severe. Do you see where I'm getting at? Get yourself to be at least a little bit more aware, or you're going to be a statistic within the many systems. You got yourself your opiate-related disorders, which is opiate withdrawal, opiate intoxication, opiate use disorder, inhalant intoxication, hallucinogen, persisting perceptual disorder, hallucinogen-induced disorders, other hallucinogen use disorders, other cannabis-induced disorders, sedative, hypnotic, and analytic, I didn't say that right, whatever, intoxication, sedative, hypnotic, perceptual disturbances, sedative, hypnotic, use disorder in a mild, moderate, and severe. You got your tobacco-related disorders. You got yourself stimulant-related disorders, such stimulant use disorder as methamphetamines, cocaine, or other unspecified stimulants at a severe, mild, and moderate. Stimulant intoxication, stimulant withdrawal. You also got unspecified stimulant-related disorder. Do you see where I'm getting at with this? This is a lot of information to take in for those that actually are not so knowledgeable but are willing to take a diagnosis and pop pills in their mouth but not really look into the information. Be a little bit more aware. Be a little bit more proactive. I'm not saying you're going to know everything, but at least try to. You do not want to be taking diagnosis after diagnosis after diagnosis and then find out at the end that most people look at you as you're somewhat deranged because you took no responsibility for really understanding your diagnosis, not to mention your medication. It makes no sense. Be a little bit more responsible, or at least try. You put a little bit more effort behind it, you probably be a little bit more respected behind it. Now, also, let's try this one, which I find hysterical. Besides all that was said, there is also something called known other or unknown substance-related disorders, which is unknown substance use disorder, unknown substance intoxication, unknown substance withdrawal, unknown substance-induced disorders, and unspecified other substance-related disorders. Now, I'm not going to go through the criteria of that or any of those because I want you to do the research. Pick and choose what you feel close to. Engage. Don't become that statistic. You don't want to. You don't want to be taken advantage by the systems anymore. Be aware. Just a little bit more. So, don't party hard, party smart. Yeah. Like I said, pretty much people have been doing drugs and substances and getting high since the dawn of time. So when you have somebody tell you don't do drugs, it's just like, bitch, fuck you. It really is. It's just like, don't lie to me. Don't patronize me. I'm not that stupid. And you should be able to tell people that. You're not that stupid. But it's being at least a little bit more aware of how long it lasts in the system. The basics. What would it do depending with a mental illness compared to that of those that actually has a substance addiction issue? Remember, you have differences when most people are like, oh, you're an addict. It's like, bitch, I'm not an addict. I may be a recreational user, but I'm not an addict. Know your differences, my friend. Know your differences. So, here, let me put this one here. I find this funny. Some quotes to just think about. They talk about my drinking, but never my thirst. That's a Scottish proverb. Again, they talk about my drinking, but never my thirst. Take that any way you please. Lily Tomlin once said, reality is a crutch for people who can't cope with drugs. Hell yeah! But this one is without the benefit of a doubt. This was by Barry Lee Patner. Now, this one really doesn't have to do about drugs. This doesn't really have to do with don't party hard, party smart. Though actually I feel that I can take the quote and pertain it to me. Good judgment comes from experience. And experience comes from bad judgment. Again, let me say that. Good judgment comes from experience. And experience comes from bad judgment. Barry Lee Patner. So, in the end, I hope you got some information out of here that actually may be a little bit more useful. Don't beat yourself up on the whole concept of he is a drug user, he's a recreational user, she's this, he's that, whatever else. You're going to hear a lot of ridicule for actually using any kind of substance whatsoever. But don't beat yourself up for it, because basically those people that actually do use substances, well, to be frankly honest, pretty much it's almost everyone. Sooner or later, those people are going to have to come across of using. It's depending how far they go with it. So, have a good one. Hope you got something out of it. And again, if you're in the party scene, you're having that drink, just be a little bit more aware of your environment. Be more aware of you. Be careful out there. But as I told one friend of mine, instead of actually doing 15 lines of coke or maybe 10 lines of coke with everybody else, instead of doing that, be a little bit more conscientious and just do 2. Remember, tolerance, reaction, not to mention, God forbid, if there's any fentanyl in it or some kind of mix, it's okay to be with the party. It's okay to play around with the party. It's another thing to get taken advantage of because you did too much at the party. Watch yourself. Don't party hard, party smart. I hope you got something out of it. I know I